Hi there, I'm Dean Heskin, President and CEO of Swiss American Trading Corporation, and you are tuned in to our podcast entitled The Secret War on Cash. And we do have quite a doozy of a war going on right now. And what I'm specifically referring to is BRICS, the alliance that has been formed. Initially started with Brazil, Russia, India, China, and South Africa. But as we'll get into here in a moment, it has expanded and continues to expand. And I think we're going to continue to see it expand. I have with me my co-host, Chris Agolestos. Chris, good morning. How are you this morning, this fine day?
Fine day is right. It's actually under 100 degrees here most of this week, so that's a big win for the Phoenix area.
No kidding. I mean, in fact, I think it's only in the 80s right now, which is, I mean, you literally go from the epicenter of hell into something that's almost Eden-esque. So
I know.
It is. It is a fine
Let's hope
day.
it stays.
I think legitimately this is actually probably the finest day that we've had weather-wise.
Yeah.
In at least 3 months, maybe more.
Yeah, I would agree with that. Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah.
There you go. See,
thank goodness.
Things are starting to really look up now, at least as it pertains to Arizona weather. Well, we're talking about BRICS today, and BRICS has become a very popular topic in our podcast. In fact, interestingly, we've covered this in podcast. We've covered it to some extent, I would say, pretty extensively.
Yeah.
But you don't really hear a ton about it in the mainstream news or media. And what's surprising about that is it's a very serious topic, and B, I mean, at the cornerstone of any discussion that ever comes up with BRICS, it's always centered around, I'll paraphrase, but not by much, the destruction of the US dollar. And I would even say, to add to that, like the planned destruction of the US dollar. Yeah. So let's look at this first article here. Excuse me for my throat today, folks. I've got a little, maybe it's all this good weather is gotten all shut up.
You're paying the price.
That's fine. It's worth it.
Yeah.
Okay, first article. We have experts say currency backed by gold may be key to ditching the US dollar. Well, in our podcast, this isn't a new concept or a new thing. We have talked about exactly this, that how one of the things that has caused, and there's a few things, but one of the things in particular that has caused this surge in interest and more nations that have kind of aligned themselves and joined the BRICS establishment has been the fact that it is a gold-backed currency. The interesting thing, though, as you get into this article, and it talks about ditching the U.S. dollar, and I'll let you explain a little bit, Chris, from your perspective. Mm-hmm. However, some of the takeaways that I got from it that I found to be interesting is that they do cite the fact that central banks have been buying up a lot of gold recently, and that's a very true statement. And we've made this distinction before as well. But what's really important to kind of keep in mind is that when you're talking central banks, it's not as though you have the United States, these central banks, and then over here in this corner you have, well, it'll be triangular, but we'll call it the corner of the triangle. You have BRICS. My point is that these central banks are BRICS nations, some of them. And so it's not as though there's this huge divide between, in this instance we're talking or discussing here, these three entities. These three entities are more intertwined than not. Mm-hmm. And that was one thing. And the other thing, which has been all over the news, is blockchain technology, cryptocurrencies, digital currencies, that type of thing. And many people looking towards the future and that being the currency of the future. But for the first time that I remember in all the things that we've covered with BRICS, and with blockchain for that matter, they make a very good point in stating that one truly advantageous thing to BRICS over even blockchain technology is that BRICS has backing by gold. And so it's a lot easier for people to swallow that, if you will, because
Yeah.
it is what it is type deal. Whereas with blockchain, there are still a lot of question marks out there. There's
Mhm.
still a lot of uncertainty. So tell us a little more about this, Chris. What do you see as it relates to this most recent news that we've gotten on BRICS?
Yeah, well, the smart thing about it, in my opinion, is that they're using something that's tried and true and time tested, very simple and has always worked, and that's gold. But they're also developing this BRICS Pay program, which relies on blockchain technology. So you have I guess, the stability of the precious metals that all of these central banks have been buying up to kind of shore up their books, if you will. But then you also have the modern day practicality, maybe, and flexibility behind blockchain. And so if they can find the proper balance between the two, it could be the best of both worlds. And we'll know more. I mean, it talks a little bit in here about some of this is speculation because they have the summit, BRICS summit coming up in October, where they're expected to announce more details about these changes and the technologies and whatnot. So we don't know exactly what's going to be said yet. But there's a lot of speculation that this could sort of be the best of both worlds, and let's have something stable with a lot of backing from gold, and also a blockchain technology that is obviously very new and popular with individuals and maybe even with governments looking to do international transactions like the BRICS nations. So it's going to be interesting to see what actually comes out, what sort of firm announcements they make next month. Obviously we'll stay on top of that, but it's definitely an interesting development.
Well, you're absolutely right, and as you mentioned, we'll keep on top of this and see some of the things that develop here in the coming days, weeks, and months ahead. We have, the summit for BRICS.
Hmm.
That's coming up, I believe that's in October. Is that correct? I
October,
think it's
yeah.
October.
Hmm.
But let's taking a look at this next article. We have BRICS announcing that 34 new countries have formally applied to join the alliance.
Yeah.
So it is growing. It's growing rapidly. The interesting thing, though, as I was reading through this, and I can only speak for myself. I don't know about you, Chris. You can chime in
Hmm.
here, but when the way, like as we've covered BRICS for all this time, it's in a way, and I don't know why this is, but in a way, it was just one of these things where, like, you had Putin, who is to a great extent kind of spearheading this campaign. Putin would like nothing more than to dethrone the U.S. dollar, and just kind of had this what's the word, opinion or perspective that Putin was just out there trying to capture as many nations as he could to join this alliance. But if you look at the title of this, 34 new countries have formally applied. And what I'm getting at here is that it's not just as easy as a country saying, "Hey, we want in, let us in." They formally apply, and as this article gets into, the BRICS alliance is they are considering whether or not to let these nations in.
Yeah.
So now I don't know what that process looks like. I don't know. I can't speak to what kind of if there is a formal criterion they use.
Hmm.
If it is just if this is more a formality, a statement or announcement like this. But I do get the sense a couple of things. One, that it probably has a little bit more of a stink test involved with it than not. And number two, it just speaks to the fact that it's not as though there was just this instantaneous number of nations that all at one time became part of this alliance, or it was like just like a huge campaign to get people involved. And
Right.
we talked about, I don't recall off the top of my head, Chris, but I mean, BRICS officially, I think, has been around since 2001. And it's
Hmm.
only recently, as the world has gone hungry for a stable currency and something that it has some substance or reality backing it, that it's really kind of taken off. So, I mean, what would you say in terms of your perspective on an article like this? Do you think this kind of speaks to seriousness and how serious this BRICS alliance is taking this, and how committed they are to making sure that it is as sound a currency replacement as possible?
Yeah, they're not like you mentioned. Nations have to actually apply and go through this process, and like you, I don't know what it is because I haven't applied yet, and they haven't asked me if anybody's wondering. But for them to do that, 34 countries. That means that they have a strong interest, right? They're not just throwing their hat in the ring for no reason. Russia, led by Putin, definitely has been behind a big push to get more people on board. But they're not just rounding up a bunch of people and just letting them in the door either, right? They are vetting them because they want. I think they want what any like reserve currency would want is stability and or stable partners. So they're looking for people who can strengthen. When I say people, nations, that can strengthen their position. So they are definitely out there recruiting, but they're looking for good members to add. You're correct. It was right around 2001 when they started, and really they didn't have much growth until this last year. I mean, I think they added one other nation in maybe 2009 or 10, something like that, and then last year they added 4. So they went from 5 to 9, which is virtually doubling. Now they have 34 new applicants, and there's a lot of speculation that even if they just pick up 5 or 10 of those, now they're doubling their numbers again in a couple of years. So it's compounding. Again, we don't know exactly what's going to happen, but this is one of the things that they're expected to talk about in October. The last year when they added people, they made the announcement in October and then brought people on board in January of the new year. So in the next few months here, we should certainly know a lot more. But they're definitely gaining momentum, and they're already in a good place. I mean, we've talked about the fact that they already control about half the world's currency movement as it stands. So adding more nations is only going to benefit them and help them grow, and unfortunately, to whatever effect, weaken the dollar.
Sure. Well, and we don't have time to get into this today, but we will cover this more in the future. And we have covered in the past where we talk about the wealth these participating nations control, as well as natural resources out there. I mean, you're talking the lion's share of the natural resources of the world. And it's interesting, you talk about numbers like 10, 20, 30, 40 different nations who are applying and looking to become involved in BRICS. Unless something's changed, and I have heard nothing to the contrary at this point anyway, this summit, half the nations of the world are expected to be there. And that's a pretty sizable turnout for something that it shows you. I mean, I don't know about you, Chris, but like the last thing on a weekend or whatever I'm looking to do is go to a summit somewhere just to listen to people talk about things, unless it's something that I have, an active interest in and something that I'm considering pursuing. And so it just shows that there's a hunger out there for alternatives, and the best alternative each day, it seems, is shaping up to be more and more BRICS. So this is why we call it, ladies and gentlemen, a secret war on cash. And if you have not contacted our office to receive a free copy of our report entitled The Secret War on Cash, please do so. You can do that by calling us at 1-800-289-2646. or visit us online at www.swissamerica.com. If you have not subscribed to this podcast, please do so. Or if you haven't begun following us on social media, we'd love you to do that as well. So, Chris, thank you so much. For those of you tuning in, thank you so much. And look forward to bringing more news like this to you in the near future. And have a great rest of your week.
Thanks a lot. Take care.